Alright guys, what is going on? You guys remember this thing? If you don't, I'm going to remind you, Sean and I pulled this thing out. This is actually the original motor. I say original, it's not entirely the original motor that we pulled out of the Celica. Why is it back? Where's the 2J? Well, you're about to find out. Alright guys, so we're back. Get the 22R. This is the motor that Sean and I pulled out of the Celica. I think in the very first actual Celica episode was of us pulling this out of the car. One of the major things that caused me to bring this back is because the 2J is gone. I sold the 2J, I sold the W55. I wanted to make some extra room because there's a lot of stuff cluttered around the backyard and the garage. And I wanted to make room while the Celica wasn't running. In doing so, and there's a couple reasons too. Since I was going to be running my Speeduino or Megasquirt clone kind of ECU on the 2J, I had no way to control the VVTi system, so it was really pointless for me to have the VVTi 2J, although I was going to try and lock the VVTi cam. That way I could still tune it and get a decent amount of power out of it. I was basically going to leave it locked in its most aggressive state. That way when you got higher up in the RPM range, it was acting as if it was in VVTi, but in the lower range, it would kind of fall flat on its face. But that was okay, because it was going to be a drift car, and all it was going to do was rev anyways. But, like I said, I made a little bit of a profit on it when I sold the 2J and the W55. That was also part of the reason for me to sell it. I said if I made some money off of it, it gets it out of my way, I'm going to go ahead and sell it. I've also been doing a lot of research on the 22Rs. I really want a turbo one. I have quite a bit of experience in doing turbo applications, and because I'm going with a standalone ECU, I really think this would be a great motor to turbo, and it's basically a single cam KA. The heads don't flow nearly as good, to be fair, but it does make a good amount of torque for the motor that it is. I think the turbo would be a lot of fun. So that's kind of where this build's going towards. We're going to actually be throwing a turbo on this, but for the time being, I have to figure out what's wrong with it. In its last state, where it was running in the car, it was just puking out coolant profusely. It was just burning through it like nothing. I mean, I was literally making clouds for the atmosphere. It was that bad. So I either got a cracked head or a cracked block, and the only reason I don't say head gasket was because I already replaced the head gasket and it still did the exact same thing. Albeit, I did find some breaks in the original head gasket where there was actually a leak between a coolant passage and the compression chamber. And so I really thought that was going to be it, but it still puked a lot after replacing the head gasket. I'm really hoping it's just the head, and if the head's cracked, I'm just going to buy a brand new head from LC Engineering. They're only about $600 brand new. Even with a cam, I think they're about $750. So I'll probably good on that road because it's really inexpensive. And it's another reason why I kind of wanted to go with the 22Rs. They're just a heck of a lot cheaper than doing a 2J. You can buy one of these blocks rebuilt for about $1,200, and that's a long block, not a short block. You can rebuild these blocks all day for $500 if you do most of it yourself. And I can lower the compression ratio, and it'd be pretty good for boost. I say pretty good for boost. There's been people that have gone up to about 15 PSI on these things. I don't think we're going to go that high, but nonetheless, I really think this is going to be good for the project because it really will make it move along a lot quicker. There's not as much engineering and customization that I have to do in order to get this to work in the Celica because it was already in the Celica. Now, to be fair, my Celica originally came with a 20R, and for whatever reason, a 22R was put in it. Probably because the 20R blew up. I don't know. I bought it this way. So, really what we're going to be doing is, like I said, we're going to try and figure out what caused this to just piss out coolant out of the exhaust, and then we're going to fix it. Once we fix it, we're going to work on getting it back in the car. As you'll see, or as you've already seen, we've already got the front end kind of started to be reassembled. I've got the cross member back in, and this bolts right to the cross member. I don't have to worry about custom oil pan or anything like that. And I think I'll be able to actually make enough clearance that whenever I'm ready to put the 240 steering rack in, I'll still be able to get this to work. So I really think it's a good combination all in all, and it'll just help move the progression of this car a little bit quicker, and it's something really unique. I've kind of noticed when it comes to turbo motors like this, there's not a whole lot of documentation on it, but a lot of people seem to agree that really the one thing lacking for these motors when they try to turbo them is the fact that the stock ECU, which you should never use the stock ECU when you turbo a motor. I mean, yeah, if you do 2 or 3 pounds of boost, great, but if you're doing 2 or 3 pounds of boost, what's the point of turbo? So because of the fact that I already have a full standalone ECU that can control this, we're going to go that route. I'm going to do a custom ignition system. I'm going to take you guys along the whole way. It's going to be an awesome build. And I'm wanting to do it as cheap as possible. So that's kind of part of it too. I want to be able to focus on the chassis more. And that was another reason why I decided to go ahead and get rid of the 2J, was I'm ready to kind of work on the chassis and get the chassis where I really, really want it. It's always been one of my fatal flaws when I build cars, is I kind of just go for power and then my chassis is kind of left lacking. So I'm wanting to make sure I get my chassis dialed in and I have it set up the way I want it. And then maybe later we'll go down to a different motor, but I'm really thinking I'll probably just go with like a 2RZ, because 2RZ simply bolt to the stock W58s, W55s, what have you, and so I don't need a custom adapter plate, I can just run a clutch setup. It's really easy and nothing too hard. I don't have to make a modified transmission tunnel or anything, so it really kind of helps keep the cost down, helps keep the car a little bit more original, and it really takes a lot of the difficulty out of it. So I'm really excited to kind of get working on this. So much so that even after dinner, I came back out here and went in the cold outside and pulled it in the garage. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the transmission off, and then we'll see if tonight, if I have enough time to go ahead and start pulling off the head. The cool thing about these motors too is they're really easy to work on, like unbelievably easy. I remember when I did the head gasket in this thing, I had it knocked out in like a day, and that was, by a day I mean like a day after work. It's super easy to work on, such a minimalistic design, that's why a lot of people tend to like them. So anyways, I'm gonna stop blabbering, we're gonna get to it, hope you enjoy it.
Don't say you need me, then hide away. Don't dare to love me, no, then fade to gray. Don't break these heartstrings, I've tuned them for you. If you play them too loud.
Alright guys, here is update number 1 on the motor. As you guys can see, we've got the whole intake where the carb was. The biggest reason I pulled this off, I wanted to double check the ports and the bolt holes. I wanted to switch this over to an EFI, basically an EFI setup. I wanted to get one of the stock EFI intakes, so that way I already have fuel injectors and everything. Makes it super easy to wire up for the standalone system that we're using. However, because of the fact that, you know, I thought this was a 20R, I think there's actually still a 20R gasket. It may not be, it could be a 22R, I don't remember when I did this. But you'll notice the ports, like especially this coolant port right here, you know, it's bigger on this gasket, but smaller on the engine, which isn't that big of a deal. You also notice the same thing with the intake ports. So, you know, there's a little bit of a bigger porting job there on whatever this intake gasket was made for, but it still works and it's still bolted up just fine. You know, there's really no big deal here. The biggest reason I want to look at this, I just wanted to make sure that if I get an EFI intake, it'll work, because some of the early model 22Rs had, I think, a slightly different intake setup, and some people were saying the late model intakes would not work, and it's only the late model ones that came with EFI. So I just wanted to double check, basically get a visual on this. But the first kind of bad thing that I found is, here's like the water coolant port that goes under the carb. Yeah, that's nice and crusty, and basically literally rusting to pieces. So I wouldn't be surprised if a piece of metal got into a coolant chamber somewhere and, I don't know, cracked it, made it to where it's leaking coolant into the combustion chamber. So, but I'm also going to pull this off. This is another like coolant thing for the intake. We'll go ahead and get that pulled off. And then also I will say the previous owner, whenever I bought the car, did say he put in a new clutch. I'm not going to lie, clutch looks kind of new. So I don't think he lied about that at all. So it's good to know. Like I said, I've already replaced the head gasket on this. But whenever I pulled this off, I pulled it off from the underneath the intake where this routes to, and I never saw this specifically, so that's not really a good sign. Then again, it's literally just this, but the fact that it's all rusted and really, really corroded leads me to believe that there's some metal pieces somewhere in this engine. I'm really hoping it's not the block. If it is, at least the blocks are kind of cheap. So that's really the whole point of this, is to figure out whether or not it's the block of the head. We'll get back to it.
You hold me like spring, holds all the memories of a winter still, mend my every worry, capture all my doubt, rewrite this melody, create some harmony. Oh, see these expectations keep me on the ground, you know they know wings.
quick. While I was disassembling and getting ready to pull off the head, kind of noticed something a little bit interesting here, which might help me out figure out where the issue is. Like I said, when this motor was running, it was actually running fairly well, but it was just dumping coolant out the exhaust, like we were literally making new clouds for the atmosphere. So if you'll notice, here are all of the exhaust ports coming out of the head, and specifically, cylinder number 1 seems to be wet. And this has been sitting for months, so I'm kind of confused that it still seems wet. I would only think maybe water or moisture or something somehow got in there. But if it got in there, you know, it'd be, I feel safe to assume that it would get in, you know, at least one more cylinder. But it seems to only be in cylinder 1, so I'm going to kind of look around the cylinder 1 area and kind of figure out what's going on. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. Hopefully this will kind of give me a clue as to where to look more. I've got most of the head bolts. I actually really like the design of this motor because the head bolts and the rocker arm assembly are all one. So when you're taking off the rocker arm assembly, you're actually pulling off the head bolts to pull the head off. It's actually a really cool design. It's very, very simple, easy to use. Got the motor set to top dead center. That's the last thing you saw me do. At least I think it's top dead center. I have the marks right where they should be for top dead center. But I should be able to pull the rocker arm assembly off. I just got to get the timing gear off and chain. And once I get the chain off, then I should be able to pull this whole head off. And I'm really hoping that the crack is in the head because these heads aren't terribly expensive. I can get a brand new one for around $500 with even like brand new valves and everything. And so if I'm thinking if I can go down that road, I will. And it would be more likely, I would think, that the head would be cracked than the block, considering it's aluminum head and iron block. But who knows? Let's see. So we're going to try and get the head off tonight. That way we can really get a nice and good look at what's all going on. I'm going to wipe down everything. I'm going to try and make as least of a mess as possible. So I'm going to get most of this oil and stuff out of here. And I was kind of looking at the oil. You can kind of see it's a little kind of milky, but then again, it's been sitting for several months outside. So I'm taking that as it is. It was under a tarp, but you know, who knows how much moisture or whatever had kind of seeped in there. It wasn't necessarily directly within rain. When it did rain, it was under a tarp, but you know, it's outside, so it is what it is. But we'll get back to it. Let's see what we can find.
No, it's not that I can't open my mouth, I just can't bear to see you crumble then flee. No, it's not that I can't pick up the pieces if you leave, but I'm sorry. Please stand by me, love me every hour. Won't you hold me like...
All right, guys, so here we are. I gotta make this quick. Camera's about to die. I'm not finding anything wrong. Here's actually how the head gasket looks. This is, like I said, the head gasket that I put on the motor. Literally, it doesn't even have like a mile on it because I literally just ran it and I never even drove the car with the head gasket. So the head gasket's still fine. It's still probably reusable. I'm finding a little bit of rust in some of the cylinder walls. That could have been from previous, you know, I don't know where this motor came from, what its condition was. Considering how it is now, I wouldn't be surprised if it came like this from whoever the guy bought it. Timing chain guides are there. Obviously, they need to be replaced because they're plastic and they're cracking.
No, it's not that I can't open my mouth, I just can't bear to see you crumble then flee. No, it's not that I can't pick up the pieces if you leave, but I'm sorry. Please stand by me, love me every hour. Won't you hold me like spring? Hold all the memories of winter still, and my every worry. Capture all my doubts, rewrite this melody, create some harmony. Whoa. See these expectations keep me on the ground, you know, keep no wings. See these expectations keep me on the ground. You can't be anything superhuman.
All right, guys, a quick update on the engine. We've obviously got the whole short block pretty much stripped down. I've got all the front accessories, oil pan, all that out. Pretty much what's left: flywheel, pistons, rod, crankshaft. Sorry. Over here, I've got the head. I actually had this dropped off and tested today to make sure it wasn't cracked. and it actually came back fine. The machine shop said they weren't able to find any cracks or anything in it. They think the head is okay. So that's part of the reason why I went ahead and kind of tore down the short block all the way down. I wanted to get all the accessories off. I know I've seen before on these motors, these front timing chain guides can break off. And then what happens is the timing chain will actually wear through the cover. And you'll actually see there's a couple of marks over here on the side of the cover, but it hasn't worn all the way through, all the way into like the water channel or anything like that, where I've seen it do it before. So that's not necessarily my concern. But over on this side, there's actually, let me see if I can find it. There's like this water plug, you know, and this is what you would normally pull out if you're, for instance, maybe pulling out if you ran water during the winter or something. But there's this plug-in that was right here, and it has like the availability for you just to drain it out by taking out the smaller one. When I took the smaller one, it seems to be blocked. And when I took the bigger one, it certainly does not look any better. So I don't know if you guys can see that well, but that's a lot of sludge, or I don't even really know what, but it seems like it's a blocked coolant passage. And I'm kind of afraid that if that is what I think it is, then there is a passage that basically got blocked and it got cracked, and that's where we're seeing the crack. Or that's where we're getting all the smoke from, is from the crack due to the blockage. And the reason that would be is because there's not adequate coolant flow going throughout the entire block. So there will be one section of the block that gets way too hot and ends up cracking. You know, we would have assumed that it was the head first because it was aluminum, but because this is iron, cracking is a little bit harder for it to do, and it can withstand higher temperatures. But if that coolant passage is completely blocked, then there's really nowhere for it to go. So I'm actually going to go ahead, and I've got a couple of tools. I'm going to kind of try and clean all that out, see if I can find anything. But worst case scenario, I might be ordering a new block, and if I order a new block, might as well get some turbo piston, shouldn't we? So we're going to go and get back to it. I'm going to kind of keep cleaning, and we'll just go from there. Alright guys, I wanted you to see this real quick. As you just saw, I just got done washing the kind of coolant area of the engine, trying to get as much material out of that coolant passageway as I could. And this is what all came out. I mean, it is just nothing but just crud and crap, and there's just a huge pile of it. So this is definitely what you don't want in your engine whenever you have it running. So I'm glad we were able to get most of all that out now. I actually broke, I'll show you guys here real quick, when I was trying to clean out some of the passageways manually, I broke one of these little cleaning tip things inside the coolant passageway. So I gotta pull that out now and see if I can pull that out now. But we're essentially just gonna let it air dry for a little bit. I have the engine upside down so that way the water can drain out of all the coolant ways and stay off of the pistons, and hopefully we should be able to go from there. The love I bleed from turning into greed. In the end it was insanity, pure tragedy. See these expectations keep me on the ground, you don't keep no wings. See these expectations keep me on the ground. You can't be anything superhuman now. Superhuman now. right, guys, just a quick update on the motor. I wanted to go ahead and give this to you guys. I know it's been a little bit. Motor is pretty much completely all together. Obviously, it's upside down right now. I'm cleaning the oil pan because it had just tons and tons of grease. You can still see a lot kind of left over on that sensor there. Trying to get as much of the grease off. I want to make it, you know, a fairly clean motor, but I'm not going to be too picky about it because there is a chance that we put it back together and it's still doing the same thing that it was doing. Considering I didn't buy anything new for this, I just basically went through it, cleaned it all out as best as I could. So we're going to go ahead and get kind of back to it. Off the screen, I did paint the valve cover this really cool gold color. So as soon as I'm done with the oil pan, I'm going to flip it back over. We're going to put that valve cover on. Then I'm going to get to the intake, the exhaust, and then it's pretty much ready to kind of run at that point. I just don't know if I'm going to run it just yet. I'm kind of on the fence. I may go ahead and put it in the car. Might be the easiest thing to do. Or I might try getting it running on the stand. I just got to figure out some kind of a radiator setup. So it might be a day or two before we actually get it running to see how she checks out. But in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and get back to work. Alright guys, engine is done for the most part. Here is how she looks. The intake, the carb, all of that is on. Exhaust is on, distributor's on, alternator is even on as well. Just a couple small things here and there that I need to do. I need to get some washers here because I deleted the mechanical fan. I'm going to go with electric fans. And the way these studs are on here, I need washers to fill in the gap where the mechanical fan used to go. No big deal at all. I also am going to be redoing, let me find it here. Just had it. Where'd it go? Of course, I misplaced it as I'm going to talk about it. But essentially, there's a water pipe or a coolant pipe that goes right here at the back of the block. It goes to this tube that's kind of dangling right here for underneath the carb, and it has a little coolant plate under the carb. Essentially, that was completely rotted. This pipe right here was almost completely gone and rotted. So I'm going to be actually probably blocking that off. It's not needed. And then on this other side, this pipe that ran over here was already blocked off anyways. It ran, I think, to this whole like EGR system thing. I don't know. I'm going to be deleting all of that. But I think we're kind of good to go ahead and at least try and get the motor running. I think I might just go ahead and throw it in the car because that way it's already in the car and we can just work around it at that point. However, I think I threw away the original. I've got like the actual mounting hardware, but I think the motor mounts that go in between here and the car are missing, so I may have to just make my own, which is not that big of a deal at all. The whole engine I redid. I actually RTV'd this entire engine except for the intake and the exhaust gaskets, just because I didn't want to spend money on it, because there's still a chance that there might be a cracked cylinder or something that we didn't see somewhere. So I've done this without spending hardly any money on it other than brake cleaner and Scotch-Brite for all the areas that I touched up and cleaned. So next we'll be trying to figure out how to get it running. But we're going to go ahead. We're going to close this episode up here. Next we'll probably be either putting this on the car or trying to get it running on the stand just to see how she runs. Like I said, I'm not worried about fuel. Carburetors are easy to get fuel to. It's more coolant. I got to get a radiator for it, get that all plumbed up. And then we got to get the starter and everything in, get all that working, yada yada. No big deal though, we can figure it out. Ignition coil is the other thing. There's a separate ignition coil that's in the engine bay that would normally go right here, kind of next to the distributor. We got to figure out how to wire that as well, but we'll figure all that when we get to that point. But for now, we're going to go ahead and close this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you guys got any questions or concerns, feel free to put them down in the comment section below, or email Sean or myself, john@venomracing.com. That is our direct email addresses. If you guys want to see anything else with this build, is there anything that I left out? Like I said, go ahead and put that down in the comment section below. I'll be happy to fill you guys in on anything and everything that I might have missed. But for now, we'll see you next time.